Welcome to Tales of Kind Souls, where true stories and unforgettable moments of courage, fate, and the human spirit come alive. She was just another passenger on a quiet flight. For her, it began as a routine day, a trip she had almost cancelled but decided to take at the last minute. Boarding the plane, she took her seat in row 14 right by the window and settled in. The aircraft wasn't full. Just a scattering of business travelers, a couple of families, and people like her, trying to get from one destination to another. The engines roared to life. The flight attendants smiled and went through their routine safety demonstration. And soon, the jet lifted into the bright blue sky. Everything seemed normal, ordinary, almost forgettable. She put on her headphones, closed her eyes, and thought about what awaited her at the other end. But fate had other plans. It happened so fast. Just a few hours into the flight, a quiet murmur spread through the cabin. The door to the cockpit cracked open, and a flight attendant stepped out with a pale face. The captain, an experienced pilot with thousands of hours in the air, had collapsed. At first, passengers thought maybe it was exhaustion, dehydration, or something minor. But whispers grew. The pilot was unconscious. He wasn't waking up. The co-pilot was still in the cockpit, doing everything he could to manage the aircraft. But flying across controlled airspace, at 35,000 feet, with only one pilot left in control, was a dangerous gamble. And then came the worst news. The co-pilot's voice, strained but steady, came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your first officer speaking. We've had a medical emergency in the cockpit. Please remain calm and stay seated. We are contacting air traffic control for assistance." The cabin fell into uneasy silence. People exchanged nervous glances. A child cried softly, and she, just a passenger, felt her heart pound against her chest. But what no one knew at that moment was that her life, and the lives of everyone on board, were about to be thrown into a situation more terrifying than any movie scene. The aircraft was flying near restricted airspace, edging toward military zones where rules were strict and mistakes could be fatal. Within minutes, ground control detected something was wrong. The plane wasn't responding clearly to instructions, and some of its turns appeared off course. For controllers on the ground, that triggered alarms. Was this a hijacking? Was it a threat? Fighter jets, F-22 Raptors, were scrambled. Their mission was clear: intercept, evaluate, and if necessary, neutralize. Passengers on board knew nothing about this at first. To them, it was still about the fallen captain and the pressure on the co-pilot. But in the sky outside, two sleek silver-grey F-22s closed in, their engines humming with restrained power. From her window seat, she noticed the faint glimmer of something in the distance. At first, she thought it was another plane, but then it drew closer, fast, too fast. Her breath caught. She pressed her face to the glass. And then she saw it, an F-22 fighter jet right alongside them. Its pilot clearly visible through the tinted canopy, helmet reflecting sunlight. Gasps spread through the cabin as more passengers noticed. Another jet appeared on the opposite side, boxing them in. Fear surged like wildfire. Why were fighter jets here? Were they about to be shot down? The co-pilot's voice crackled again, slightly trembling this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are in contact with military escorts. Please remain calm. We're working with air traffic control to get everyone safely on the ground." She swallowed hard, her palms slick with sweat. Her mind raced. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't trained for emergencies. She was just ordinary, a passenger. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something more was about to be asked of her. Time blurred. The co-pilot struggled, trying to handle both the controls and constant communication with ground control. The flight attendants were busy, checking on the passengers, assisting with oxygen, and preparing for the possibility of an emergency landing. And then came the unexpected call for help. A flight attendant rushed down the aisle, her voice urgent. "Is there anyone on board with flight experience? Anyone at all?" The words hit like a thunderclap. Murmurs erupted, people shook their heads, others avoided eye contact. Flying a plane wasn't like driving a car. It wasn't something just anyone could attempt. And then her hand rose. Slowly, hesitantly, but it rose. She wasn't a pilot. Not in the traditional sense. But she had flown small planes years ago. A hobby she had abandoned after college, choosing instead a stable desk job. She hadn't touched a control yoke in nearly a decade. But in that moment, with dozens of lives at stake, she couldn't stay silent. "I've flown before," she said, her voice shaking but clear enough for the flight attendant to hear. Within minutes, she was being ushered toward the cockpit. Her knees felt weak, her chest tight, but her mind sharpened with adrenaline. The door opened and she stepped inside. The sight made her stomach drop. The captain slumped unconscious, pale and motionless. The co-pilot drenched in sweat, juggling instruments, radios, and altitude adjustments. "You have experience?" the co-pilot asked, his eyes desperate. "Not on a jet like this. Just small planes. But I know some basics," he nodded sharply. "Then you're better than nothing. Help me." And just like that, she was no longer a passenger. She was part of the fight to save everyone on board. Outside, the F-22s maintained formation, their presence a constant reminder of the stakes. Inside, she sat at the second control seat, her trembling hands hovering near the instruments. The co-pilot barked quick instructions: airspeed, altitude, heading. She responded, adjusting controls, her old muscle memory flickering back. It wasn't smooth. The plane dipped once, causing a scream from the cabin. Turbulence rattled the fuselage. But little by little they steadied. Ground control patched through to the cockpit. A calm voice spoke. "We understand you have a medical emergency. Maintain your heading. We'll guide you in." Minutes stretched like hours. Every decision felt razor-sharp. Every movement, life or death. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she focused harder than she ever had in her life. And then came the descent. The most dangerous part. The runway loomed ahead, lights glowing in the dusk. The co-pilot handled the major controls, but she assisted with flaps, gear, and readings. Her voice was steady now, surprising even herself. Together, they brought the massive aircraft lower, lower, until wheels screeched against tarmac. The plane shook violently, brakes squealing, but they slowed, until finally silence. They had landed. The cabin erupted in cheers, sobs, and applause. The passengers who had moments ago feared for their lives now clapped for the woman who had been just a passenger, until she wasn't. Paramedics rushed aboard, taking the captain away. Military personnel arrived, saluting the co-pilot and eyeing her with astonishment. She stepped back into the cabin, her legs trembling, her heart still racing. Passengers reached out to touch her shoulder, to thank her, to call her a hero, but she shook her head. "I just did what I had to do." Anyone would have. Later, when the F-22 pilots met her on the ground, one of them removed his helmet, smiled, and said, "You didn't just save lives up there. You gave us a story we'll never forget." And maybe that was the truth. Heroes aren't always soldiers or trained professionals. Sometimes they're ordinary people who refuse to stay ordinary when life demands more. She had boarded the flight as just a passenger, but when the sky grew dark and uncertain, she became the difference between disaster and survival. This was her story, and that is the power of the human spirit, the power of courage found in the most unexpected places. Thank you for watching Tales of Kind Souls. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe a little more in what people are capable of, make sure to subscribe and share, because stories like this remind us all that kindness, bravery, and strength can be found in anyone, sometimes even in you.